So, what if I told you that everything you think you know about how your brain works is probably wrong? Today, we're going to dive into a revolutionary new theory based on a paper published just this year that completely flips the script on how your mind builds your reality.
I mean, just think about it for a second. How does your brain take this constant flood of messy, chaotic information from your senses and somehow build the stable, solid reality you're experiencing right now? It's one of the biggest puzzles in neuroscience, and for decades, we've been trying to crack it.
For the longest time, the go-to theory was pretty simple and, kinda elegant. The idea was that the brain worked like a factory assembly line. Information would move up a chain of command, starting with really simple stuff like lines and dots, which then get passed along and assembled into more complex shapes. And finally, at the end of the line, you get a recognizable object, like a face.
But it turns out the brain is way stranger and, honestly, a lot more powerful than that. Evidence has been piling up that this classic assembly line model just can't explain some of the absolutely amazing things your brain does without you even thinking about it.
Okay, so to really get why this new theory is such a game changer, we've got to take a quick look at that classic model it's replacing, the hierarchical model.
The old thinking went like this. Down at the very bottom of the chain, you have a brain region like V1. Its job is to see basic things like edges and lines. Then, it sends that information up to the next level, V2, which starts putting those lines together into contours and textures. This process continues up the ladder until several steps later, you finally get a complete object recognized at the top. Simple, right?
Well, here's where things get interesting. When neuroscientists started to actually map the brain's wiring in detail, they found some serious cracks in this tidy little model. They kept finding all these bizarre connections that just made no sense in a simple one-way assembly line.
For example, you had brain regions that were supposed to be waiting their turn, but instead they were firing off at the same time, in parallel. They found direct connections, like a private phone line, between vision and hearing, which, in a strict hierarchy, should never happen. And get this, the top-level managers were getting raw data straight from the factory floor, completely skipping the middle managers. It was clear something was fundamentally wrong with the theory.
So all of these puzzles led to a pretty radical new idea, which is what we're looking at today, the thousand brains theory. This theory just completely reimagines the whole thing. Forget the assembly line. Think of it more like a massive committee, with thousands of individual experts all working together.
Okay, here's the absolute core of it. Instead of one big system, this theory says your cortex is made of thousands of tiny repeating units called cortical columns. And here's the real kicker. Every single one of these columns is its own complete mini-brain. It can learn full models of objects all by itself, just by combining what it senses with how it moves.
So the old way, the hierarchy, was like that strict, one-way assembly line. Only the guys at the very top really knew what was going on. But the new way, what the paper calls a heterarchy, is so different. It's like a committee. Information zips around both up the chain and sideways, and every single region, even the lowest ones, can learn to recognize whole objects.
Right, but that brings up a really fascinating question. If every tiny part of your cortex can already learn complete objects on its own, then what are all those connections, the hierarchy and the parallel ones, actually for? Well, the new theory has some pretty surprising answers.
So let's start with that hierarchy. If it's not for painstakingly building an object piece by piece, what is its real job? First off, let's be super clear about what it's not for. It is not for turning a bunch of simple lines and edges into something complex like a face. That whole assembly line idea, according to this theory, yeah, we can just throw that out.
So what is it doing? Something way, way cooler. The hierarchy's job is to understand how objects are made of, well, other objects. It's how your brain gets what the paper calls compositional structure. It's how you know you're holding a phone inside a case, not some brand new single object you've never seen before.
And once you start looking for it, you see this kind of composition everywhere. A car has wheels, a face has eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Your coffee cup has a logo on it. Those hierarchical connections are what let your brain understand that the logo object is part of the cup object, and it even knows exactly where that logo is supposed to be.
Okay, so now for another huge mystery that this theory helps solve. This is something you do every single day, and you don't even think twice about it. How in the world can you tilt your head, read a book sideways, and understand it just fine?
When you do that, the actual letters hitting the back of your eye, your retina, are totally skewed and at a weird angle, but you perceive them as perfectly normal. That means your brain is performing this incredibly fast, incredibly precise transformation on the fly,
automatically correcting for how your head and eyes are moving.
So where does this magic happen? Well, the theory points to a small structure deep in the brain called the thalamus. And it suggests that the thalamus is basically acting like a super sophisticated GPS for every single one of those cortical columns, doing all these transformations in real time. It's constantly converting what your body sees and feels from your point of view into the object's stable point of view.
And it's juggling 3 critical jobs all at once, all the time. First, it corrects your sensory input. It literally rotates what you see to match the object. Second, it corrects your movement data, so your eye movements are tracked relative to the book, not your head. And third, and this is wild, it translates your motor commands. So when you think, move my eyes along the text, it figures out the correct diagonal muscle movement to make that happen. This is a total game changer.
Okay, so what about all those other weird parallel connections we talked about? This is the final piece of the puzzle. They allow the thousands of expert columns to all vote. It's like they all get on a giant conference call, even across different senses like sight and touch, and they rapidly share what they're sensing to reach a consensus. That's what makes our perception so incredibly fast and so hard to fool.
Now, this new model of the brain isn't just going to rewrite neuroscience textbooks. It has absolutely profound implications for the future of AI. It basically suggests a completely new roadmap for building truly intelligent machines.
See, the big insight here is that today's AI, for all its power, is missing these key principles. Just imagine an AI that could actually learn about the world by moving through it, instead of just being fed billions of static images. An AI that truly understands how things are put together. This gives us a real framework for finally merging AI and robotics in a meaningful way.
And this quote from the paper really just nails it. Biological intelligence and movement, they're not separate things, they are intimately related. The authors are betting that the future of AI is going to require a similar fusion. The big takeaway here is that you might not be able to get to true human-like intelligence without the ability to move and interact with the world.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. What could we build if our AI didn't just see the world through a fire hose of data, but could actually move within it to truly understand it? It's a fundamental shift in how we think about the next generation of intelligent machines. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.